What does it mean to be a man? We've been talking about this on Life Talks as we as parents are looking at our boys and saying, how can we help them reach full maturity with the right kind of attitude in a world that has a lot of debate, a lot of confusion on what it means to be masculine, what it means to be a male, what it means to be a man. And there are some opportunities, I believe, as parents who are trying to do our best to raise our kids up under a biblical worldview, for us to consider the models we set before our sons, and having reasonable conversations with them as well. So my name is Dan. I'm one of the teaching pastors at Life Fellowship in suburban Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm joined with Josh Brahm, who is the president and founder of the Equal Rights Institute and good friend and producer of the show. So, Josh, we've gone through a bunch. I'm not going to go through the list again. If you didn't hear our previous episodes, go back and catch the last two episodes. But you know, we kind of touched about, you know, work ethic. We've touched about honesty, humility, these character traits, but moving a little bit in the direction of just spiritual modeling and discipleship. Yeah. You know, one of the things that I failed at as a father, I think my father failed at as a father, I think a lot of fathers fail at, is the idea of walking with our kids through spiritual disciplines. Namely, just things like praying with each other, praying for each other, praying in their presence. My dad, bless his heart, he didn't come to know Christ until he was 22. And he lived a completely pagan life before he knew Christ. He did not grow up in a Christian
As you would
home.
expect from someone who's not a Christian.
Right, exactly. A moral life. He wasn't a drunk. He wasn't a druggie. You know, he wasn't promiscuous. But he certainly walked apart from God, which is just as damning as if you were, you know, a wild person. Sure. But he did not ever have that model in his life. So often he was very dependent upon the preaching. And we were in a backwoods country setting with a small rural church. And once every spring,
that preaching like?
Exactly. Well, every spring and every fall, we would have something called a revival.
Oh, yeah. Really?
So
you had 2 a year?
2 a year. They would start on Sunday and they would end on
forced.
Sunday. A little? Oh my goodness. 8 nights.
8 nights in a row?
8 nights in a row. It would start at 7:30 and end between 9 and 10. School nights, not a problem.
Yeah.
And we would start at 7:30 because most of the people there were farmers and you had to get your
Did you go to
chores done.
Would you have to go all?
Oh, absolutely. We didn't miss a one.
I have never been to one of these things. So this is a little bit of a foreign concept to me. Okay, so you had to go to church. How old are you?
My
As a
early
kid,
5, 6 years of age.
8 evenings in a row?
In the fall and in the spring. It'd be a fall revival and a spring revival. And if you grew up in the 60s, this was 50s, 40s, 50s, 60s, this was very common.
And so compare and contrast a revival service with a typical Sunday morning service.
Similar, except the preaching was longer and louder and very pointed. So they would always, because it was bring revival to your community, people coming to hear the gospel. And so there would be different contests or emphases. Yeah. So there was one night that was always, they called Pack a Pew Night. And so you were supposed to bring enough to fill your entire pew. Then there was Young People's Night, always Friday night. It was Young People's Night. And they would do
that
pizza
seems like
and
a
activities.
dumb idea. Don't have the young people have to choose. Like, tell them to go on Thursday so they can still have their Friday. You might get them there.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of dumbness going on.
Okay, fair enough.
So either Thursday night or Saturday night, and sometimes they would do like a pre-service warm-up service, was parenting night. And that was when the parents were instructed on how to beat their children.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
Yeah. Very, very, very old-fashioned. No. Very. And then the sermon that usually followed after that was on having what they called a family altar. Have you ever heard that term before?
A family altar?
Yes.
No.
So this was the notion that you gathered your family together around the Bible, i.e. the altar, and you would teach them from the Bible and pray with them. Okay. Again, it's a family devotional. I think it's good. There's nothing wrong with it. They just ended up making it oppressive.
Yeah.
So my dad would go to the revival and they would preach on that. And my dad would feel convicted about not leading his family appropriately. My dad, who worked 6 days a week and often wasn't even home in the evenings.
Right.
So he would start this very awkwardly. First, he'd get out his King James Version Bible that had words that we had no clue what they meant, and syntax that was just beyond awkward. And he would read a chapter, and then he would look at us and say, "What does that mean to you?" Which is the worst way to conduct a Bible study. I'm 7 years old.
He was doing his best.
He was doing his best. God bless him. And then he would pray and expect us all to pray in kind of a circle. It was miserable. I'm not going. And thankfully, it was as miserable for him as it was for us.
Yeah.
And it lasted a week, maybe 2, and then we were done. It just all of a sudden just disappeared, and we never brought it up because we were afraid it would kickstart it.
Right. Like, everyone, let's just all silently agree that this is not.
So that was what was sold to us. Here's the thing. And to this day, I love to do this, but we cut our own firewood. And we would fell a bunch of trees in the spring, and then in late summer and fall, we would cut them into firewood because they would have had a chance to dry out.
Oh, okay.
And you would burn the brush. So either in the spring we were cutting a lot of trees down, or in the fall we were cutting them up into firewood and burning the brush. It was something that Dad and I did together. He would use the chainsaw, and I would drag the wood and stack it and so forth. And we'd get tired, and we'd sit on a log and wait for the fire to burn down, and we would talk. And in those conversations, we would talk about everything from, farming to Scripture.
Yeah.
To what it meant to be growing up, to things that happened to him when he was a kid, things that his dad did to him that he didn't want to do to me. Different things. It was moments of transparency and honesty that I look back on. And, my dad's been dead 43 years. But those conversations were seminal in my life.
Yeah. And how interesting is it that all this work and effort went into, at least twice, into doing these awkward family meeting things, where he was trying to make some of that good happen that he ended up doing in front of the fire with you. What he needed was to sit down at the fire with you and have quality time with you and just talk.
Yeah.
And it's just interesting. It's counterintuitive.
It is. But it makes perfect sense when you stop and think about it, because Deuteronomy chapter 6 says, when you rise up, when you lie down, when you sit by the way, and when you walk by, or when you sit and when you walk by the way. So travel time, morning time, dinner time, and bedtime. Those are prime times. So today, what do? We get in the car, we turn on our podcast or our radio.
Oh, see, don't go convicting me again. You ended the last episode with convicting me.
Yeah. We don't eat dinner together. We scatter and we eat out of paper bags. In the morning, we're usually so rushed, so frantic. You're going this way, and we're making lunches and so forth. Last thing. And at night, we're exhausted, we're empty, we're dry. And so, I used to say this to my wife, I hate the fact that how many nights did my kids, the last thing they heard before they went to sleep was, if you get out of that bed one more time, that was what they went to bed with in their ears.
Yeah.
And they probably would still have needed that.
Sure.
But there were also the opportunities where I could have sat at the side of their bed. And I did some, but I didn't do it with regularity. I guess what I'm just saying to parents today is, one of the aspects of teaching your kids, boys and girls, but we're talking boys now, is to take these moments, the dude times, the dad and son times, and pray with them, pray for them, talk about the difficult subjects, answer the questions. It won't always be, angels and harps and wonderful conversations that are life-changing.
I promise it won't.
Yeah, sometimes they will irritate the living crud out of you. They'll be silly. They'll be sullen. You're going to but every once in a while, the sun breaks through even the darkest clouds, and you'll have this conversation, and in that moment, just revel in what God is doing, which is opening a pathway to their heart and a pathway for you to be honest, to be transparent, and say, son, if you think you struggle at that by yourself, you don't. If you're talking to your 13, your 14-year-old son, and you don't need to confess every sexual thought and sin you've had. They don't want to hear that from dad. But if you look on the internet browser, if you find out that he's exploring some things on the internet that are wrong, that you shouldn't be doing, don't come at him like, How could you?
Yeah.
You know exactly how he could because you did. All right? So cut that out and talk to him from where he's at. And again, you don't have, when I was your age, let me tell you, no, don't, you don't need to do that because he didn't want to hear that.
Right.
And,
it is important for him to know that he's not alone.
He's not alone. And I don't think there's anything wrong with saying, hey, I want you to know, I struggled when I was your age.
Yeah.
And dude, I can still struggle today because this is the way, this is part of what it means to be a man.
Yeah, especially now.
Yeah. And so, particularly now, I'm so glad you said that because it is more available than has ever been available. Yeah. For me, when I was 13, you had to go look for dirty magazines.
Pretty hard.
Oh, yeah. You had to know somebody.
It was too hard.
Yeah. But today, they come to you, the purveyors of pornography.
It's
unavoidable. So, knowing that, don't just hope for the best, but rather have these moments where you're praying with them, pray for them, pray that you will have the opportunities to have these meaningful conversations and then try to make them happen. That was why one of the things, I think I talked about this a couple of years ago, we did do dates with me and my boys. And when they turned 13, my wife took the girls, I took the boys, but they could go on a one-on-one trip with the parent of their gender anywhere in the country they wanted to. I saved up my mileage for it and made a big deal. And we would spend a week. And you'd say, well, was it just all amazing? No, it wasn't all amazing. My son and I had a knockdown, drag-out fight in Yosemite National, Sequoia National Forest. Yeah. We didn't even talk for like 12 hours. We were riding in the car in absolute silence for like 12 hours. But he does not remember that. I do. He doesn't remember that. But he was talking the other day, remember the time we did this and we did that? And, And yeah. So again, you're creating these experiences that knit your heart together so that when you do go through the tough times, you have this. And certainly my boys were not perfect, nor was I perfect. But what you're looking for are these moments. So we had, for my youngest son, well, both my sons, when they were in high school, we owned a summer house. And we would, sometimes just the boys would go there. And I always said, okay, it's the boys' weekend. They loved it. And I said, we're going to buy all the junk food you want. Eat all the junk food, ice cream, potato chips. I don't care. You can eat it 3 times a day. I'm not going. You can pee off the back deck. That's not a problem. If you want to sit around the house in your underwear, that's not a problem. Yep. Down to the passing of gas. Because there were no women there, and so they celebrated their stupid masculinity at that point. And in doing so, they just thought it was hilarious. They thought it was just so cool. Yeah. They would have said, when are we going to go to a due date again? But what I was also creating in those moments is the opportunities to connect as men. Yeah. We didn't go shopping. We didn't do each other's nails. Yeah. We did things that were intrinsically masculine and at times
just would have been more interesting to you guys.
Yeah, and if the girls were having similar trips like that they did things that the guys did, I wouldn't want to know that they did it, quite frankly. But there are, again, some differences. It's why, I had a friend who's had 3 boys, and he said, I am never letting them play with guns. Guns are dangerous. I'm never letting them play with guns. He wouldn't buy him toy guns. And I lost touch with him for a year or 2, and I came back to his house, and his kids by the time were like 8, 6, and 4. And there were guns everywhere. Yeah. Everywhere. And I said, dude, what happened? I thought you were going to be like the anti-gun dad. And he said, they would chew their toast into a shape of a gun. They would shoot each other with chicken fingers. He said, I gave up.
That's really funny. I bet that's the way it was before guns, too. They would have been swords and things. Yeah, and swords and things. You just wouldn't be able to get them to
my
stop.
My 16-year-old son still kept carving his own swords when he was out in the woods. So, but all that to say is look for those moments and be a mentor in the moments. Yeah. And moving on beyond that, I would say provide godly male mentors for them to look to other than you. Whether it is somebody at church, whether it is another family member. My brother-in-law took both my sons under his wings at different times. He never said anything different than I would have said, but they would listen to him because Uncle Jeff was cooler than Dad, largely because he wasn't Dad. Yeah. And when they went to Uncle Jeff's house, it was fun because it was once a year, it's the summertime. And I have a special relationship with his boys as well. So you can develop these mentoring relationships that allow you to walk in tandem with someone else. Titus talks about this. Paul was this way to Titus and to Timothy, I believe. We don't even know anything about their at
least for a while, right? At least until they had a blow
season of time. Well, yeah. And we have to understand there is a seasonal aspect to it.
Yeah.
There is. But whether it's an uncle, a pastor, a coach, for me, it has been as I've gotten older, kind of as a professor, grandpa, mentor to Gen Z kids. I really love that. In fact, to me, it's one of the most rewarding parts of my ministry in my life. I'm not 20 years old anymore. I don't want to. Every once in a while, I'll say, "Let's go ride roller coasters together." And you're nuts. I'm not doing that.
Obvious caveat just before we move on to the next thing.
You make sure you screen them.
We all do. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There it is. Is this? We need to understand that this is not just a Catholic Church problem. Right. Even though everyone kind of talks about this.
Watch out for predators. There's always going to be out there.
Really
Watch for
careful.
grooming.
Yep. Watch out for grooming.
And I have rules even that I keep. Even no, I've never been accused of anything, but I just don't. I had one time where a woman really got kind of aggressive on some things, and I said, you know what, I think this. I think I don't want to put myself in this position.
Yeah.
So, but my general rule is I won't meet with you like in my office or grab a hamburger with you younger than 16. And then from 16 to 18, always will have mom and dad's permission, their involvement. I pick them up from house or whatever.
That's
and
wise.
It's almost always at their initiative. They'll say, Pastor Dan, I want to talk to you. And I say, would you like to grab a hamburger?
Yeah.
Let's talk to your mom or dad about it. And I think,
love that.
I think you need to watch out for somebody that would not want that.
Yes.
I didn't give kids my private phone number or things like that. So you do need to be really, really careful. Yeah. And if somebody is taking you into confidence, make sure you look. I just want you to know your son's been talking to me about some things that I just want you to know I'm trying to do exactly what you would do, but I just want you to be aware of that. So if anything comes up, you're not uncomfortable. And if they show any signs of comfort, absolutely important to do. You just can't assume anything today. And I would say don't assume anything today. So the mentors is, I think, I want to circle back on this. We've talked about it, but it's really important to me. And that is teaching proper respect for women and authority.
Yes.
Whether it's a sister or a teacher, I think honoring others in the position that God has placed them and in the role that God has placed them, that includes gender, to see them as image bearers of God. Nobody's less than.
Yes, that's right.
Scripture teaches neither Greek nor Jew, male nor female, bond nor slave, bond nor servant. The idea of a hierarchy is pretty antithetical to our value before the Lord and how we should be treating each other.
Yes.
John the Baptist said, he must increase, I must decrease. The only person that we put on the pedestal is Christ himself. And in fact, the only thing other than that belongs on pedestals is vases of dead flowers and the busts of dead people. So if you're alive, you don't qualify. All right. So nothing else belongs on a pedestal. And even Jesus, even the scripture says, don't make a graven image to me. Know me from your heart, not from some kind of image. So I just want to hit that one more time.
Yeah, one opportunity, an easy opportunity I have found to do this is while watching movies with your sons. There are a surprise. I think I might have mentioned this on an episode prior, so forgive me if I did. But there are so many. Unfortunately, there are so many examples, especially from movies from more than say 10 years ago, of just depicting men in subtle ways sometimes taking control or advantage of women. So Empire Strikes Back. There's this scene where are you a Star Wars person?
I have never watched any of them all the way through.
We need to watch Star Wars together. So I don't know if you would like Andor. I should watch Andor with you. If there's one thing that you would like from Star Wars, yes, it is. Okay. But it's so okay. Never mind. I'm not even getting into it right now. The point is, there's a famous scene. There's a famous late. This is late 80s? Yeah, early 80s. Harrison Ford, Han Solo, the spaceship is stuck somewhere. They need to repair it. So he's working on repairs. Princess Leia, who he's, likes, is also working on repairs. And there's a scene where they're working on repairs together and he kind of comes up and he's fairly aggressive and they end up making out eventually. But C says no, stop 4 or 5 times and then does that old movie cliche thing of just oh, I guess I want this. And then just is in for it. And just there are cases like that where I think it's good for us to pause and be like, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
This was like the way people thought a lot back then.
Yeah.
This is not good. The fact that C said no matters a lot. Like things like that. Like there are times for us to show like there are little even not like we don't have to be super lame or weird or uncomfortable. You can just say like, just for a second, let's talk about that. That's not cool. And move on.
Yeah, I love what you said. I honestly think it's a great idea when you're watching movies with your kids or TV shows that you always have the remote in your hand ready to press pause.
Yep.
Those are called teachable moments. Yep. And they're more important than the actual movie.
Yes.
Now, your kids are going, Dad, don't stop it there. But no, conversation time.
Yeah.
We're going to watch this.
Yeah.
Because you also not only are addressing that issue, but you're teaching them to develop critical thinking and a filter.
Yes. That's a good point.
That skill of being able to think critically while consuming media is super important to teach to our kids.
Yeah, because theoretically then at that point on, they might be thinking, okay, does he consent? Like every time they see like one of these like kissing scenes. Like
yeah, but in a lot of other things, even when it's not, and by the way, the 30s, 40s, 50s, the early days of Hollywood, there was so much of this, like what you need is kissed by a real man,
that's so
and I'm a big John Wayne fan. I love John
I never got
Wayne.
it.
Oh no, I love John Wayne and the West. No, there's a movie where he paddles a woman.
Oh no.
It was like one of his most popular movies.
Oh.
And we look back on it now and we roll our eyes and we say, yeah, well, that was the 50s or 60s that this was going on.
I'm like, that's abuse. Look, there's abuse right there. That's how I react to that.
That's like thinking 100 years from now we look back and see porn and say, well, that was just porn in those days.
Right,
we have to, but teaching that filter. And I think that's important because media changes over time.
Yes.
But right and wrong doesn't.
Yes.
And so
Culture
culture changes, all messages, things that are acceptable today weren't acceptable 50 years ago. And things that are acceptable 50 years ago are not acceptable today. So we always, again, this is the idea of going back and filtering everything through a biblical worldview and a biblical lens that I think is so absolutely crucial. And so that was, kind of one of my points was we have to be willing to talk about culture's confusion because news, media, what's happening at school, these become discipleship moments as we provide a counter message, a counter response, or at least a critical response to cultural lies that contradict biblical truth. And I think in doing so, we have to admit that we've not always gotten it right.
Yeah.
That whether we're talking about David or whether we're talking about Dan, we don't always get it right. But that's the wonderful thing about truth is that it progressively makes us closer to God the more we yield to it. So anyway, we're out of time, but I've enjoyed these conversations with you, Josh. To all of our listeners out there, again, thank you so much for being part of our conversations. You can always let us know what you're thinking by contacting us at LifeTalks@LifeCharlotte.com. And we hope you'll share with us, share others with the link to our programs on YouTube and on our regular media page on our website and at Spotify and all the other different places you may listen to your podcasts. But as always, thanks again for joining us here at Life Talks.